might be the funniest person I know. Other than they're on par. She's the female version of Tony. And so I've set him up on a date, and I don't know how he's going to.
Democratic presidential nominee and former Vice President Joe Biden. Here's a look at the stakes for tonight. About 3/4 of likely viewers, people who say they'll watch, are tuning in to see how their candidate does. Just 6% say they're watching because they're still deciding whom to vote for. 6% may not sound like a lot, but it can take less than that to flip a state. 13 states, plus Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, saw a margin smaller than 6% in the 2016 election. Together, they're worth 162 electoral votes, more than half the 270 needed to win the presidency. Caitlin Huey-Burns and Nicole Killian join me now. Caitlin is CBSN's political reporter. She is in Cleveland tonight. And Nicole is a CBS News correspondent covering all things out of Washington. Welcome to you both. All right, Caitlin, let me start with you. The number of persuadable voters may be relatively small, but how important are undecided voters at this moment in the campaign?
Right, that number of undecided voters is very small. We have fresh new polling out from CBS News that shows a vast majority of people that are going to be watching this debate tonight, likely voters. 73% say that they've already chosen a candidate and they're tuning in to see how that candidate does. About 41% are tuning in just for the entertainment value alone. About 8% are tuning in because they have nothing else to watch, so maybe they've exhausted all of the options on Netflix. And here's the key number, 6%. 6% of likely voters in our poll tonight say they are tuning in to figure out who they are going to vote for. So it's a very small margin, a very small number. We've been talking all day about, are there any of these persuadable voters left in an election that is increasingly becoming all about turning out your base? Who are these voters that are going to be tuning in tonight? Just 6% of them looking to see how Biden and Trump do against each other. We know, as we've been talking about also, that Democratic Party voters have been waiting for tonight this entire campaign, going all the way back to Iowa in 2019 when I was out there covering one of the first presidential events by Elizabeth Warren, who announced her candidacy. Voters even then were saying that the way that they were going to measure up these candidates running for the Democratic nomination was imagining them on a debate stage with Donald Trump. So tonight we'll see what their expectations are and if they paid off.
Yeah, definitely just
I remember you telling us about
in here for the entertainment, dude.
Months ago.
100%.
Well, Nicole, of course, one big difference about this election cycle is that voting is already underway. Close to 1.3
it's going to be good.
People
It's going to be juicy.
Voted. In the battleground state of Wisconsin, they're
something's going to happen. I think that this is going to definitely be the most exciting debate so far. I don't think that any of the other debates are getting to be.
Well, I think it does and it doesn't. I mean, that is a lot of people, but there's still a lot of people who haven't voted, and so whether someone is voting absentee,
like I would have said this one was going to be boring, but Trump's taxes came out, and I think Biden's going to fucking
waiting until election
go
day
in on him about his taxes.
Voters make up their mind when they make up their minds, and while many have, there are still some out there that haven't. I've been traveling across a couple of states recently where I have encountered people who, a few at least, who are still undecided. So to Caitlin's point, even if it is a relatively small number by our polling standards, certainly this presents an opportunity for voters to put these two candidates as side by side and see how they match up
definitely
each
some
other.
quick one-liners.
And also, again,
definitely going to be,
mentioned, certainly with the latest polling also showing that
probably
people just want to see how these candidates do. And
probably a meltdown from Trump.
Some are just tuning in for the entertainment value of it all, but
maybe
the
Biden will be.
Certainly, it will be a factor for some voters as far as their decision, and to others, it may reinforce the decision.
Should be good though. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, we know that tonight's debate topics are broken up into 6 different segments as chosen by the moderator, each for about 15 minutes. Caitlin, in which topics do you see the candidates gaining an advantage?
Well, I think the focus on two topics that are top of mind for voters heading into this November election, the coronavirus pandemic and the economy.
Oh yeah, he's gonna nail him about COVID as well.
Joe Biden has shown in battleground
Trump's
states
gonna freak out with all his lies on
COVID. On
COVID.
that measure that Americans by and large disapprove
Trump's just
of
gonna
the
lie about
president's
every
handling of
fucking thing.
coronavirus and are supporting Biden on that measure. But when it comes to the economy, that's been the silver lining for Donald Trump. He's been leading on the measure of the economy, trying to make that argument that the economy was good before the pandemic happened. So this is going to be an instance where you'll see the president on
750, what a fucking asshole. He's gonna say it's fake news, dude. He's already said it's fake news.
Biden would do and
what an
what he
asshole.
would have done differently on that measure. And then on coronavirus, this is where the Biden campaign really wants to focus tonight, making this race a referendum on the president's handling of the pandemic, and also saying what he would have done differently if he were in charge. So those are two measures that are top of mind for voters and two issues that we'll see discussed at length in this debate.
Well, Nicole, we know the president and Joe Biden have each been preparing in different ways for this debate, and we've seen them both on the debate stage before. President Trump last in 2016, and Joe Biden as recently as March. How might they approach this debate?
Well, I think in one of two ways, or a combination of both. I think if they stick to the script, I think you will hear, for instance, the president make the argument of, I've been doing more in 47 months than Joe Biden has in 47 years. That's been the argument he's been making most recently on the campaign trail. And so I think you will hear that thread through any number of topics, whether it is the pandemic, the economy, race, law and order, even with his Supreme Court nominee. So that's one possibility. And of course, Biden, the mantra he's been sounding as of late has been this Scranton versus Park Avenue approach. And so with the story that broke a couple of days ago on the president's taxes, this allows him to hammer that message home as well, that he's the one looking out for the little guy, the average worker out there, while the president has, kind of lived the high life his whole life. And so I think, again, you will hear the former vice president make that argument across all the topics tonight. If they go off script, all bets are off. I mean, I think that's really certainly one thing I'll be watching for, but I think what
I hope they go off
will
script.
be watching for, especially those who said they're looking for the entertainment value here.
I said I hope they go off script.
Will the gloves come off?
They can't help it.
Guys go
They're
after
so
each
fucking
other. If
old.
you have followed the president and watched his campaign rallies, he can go in on Joe Biden. Joe Biden equally can hit back, and we even heard the vice president just tonight at a debate watch party saying that the president is going to bring the fight to Joe Biden tonight. So to the extent that this does become a knockout, drag-out fight, that is certainly something that I think many will be watching for as well. So on script, off script, we'll just have to see.
Yeah,
a combination of both, like I said.
At this point, it's a fucking cult.
Right, something like
all the
that.
Trump
All right,
supporters
Caitlin
are a
Amy
fucking
Burns
cult.
and Nicole Killian, great to have you both. Thank you.
You can tell,
As we mentioned, the
Wall
president
Street
has
already
not
said,
been on the
they're
debate stage since 2016. Back then, Philippe Reines played the role of then
they
Republican nominee Donald Trump.
were saying that
Hillary
what they say about Joe Biden? Oh, that's my
Here's
track.
some of what they had to
I know there's a bit of a delay with the chat and the
Good
fucking
job of the 1990s.
everything, so it's kind of weird. But
How we can make it work again.
yeah, I just hope that they win it. I just hope they win it, and I hope they totally go off script and everything. But yeah, I was gonna say, Biden, Wall Street's already been like, a Biden presidency is great. Biden said he's not gonna change anything with the regulations on Wall Street or anything like that. So.
This is Secretary Clinton's 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, well, let's start the clock again, Lester.
But he'll probably want to cut
Starting
social
when I was
services.
a senator from New York. But
But I
that's
guess.
not the point here.
Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it?
Because I was a senator with a Republican president.
Oh, really?
I will be the
You could have
president
done
who
it.
will
If
get
you
it
were an
done.
effective, if you were an
That's
effective
exactly right.
senator, you could have done it. If you were an effective senator, you could have done it. But you were not an effective.
Please allow her to respond. She didn't interrupt you.
That's part of my commitment to raise taxes on the wealthy.
Nice.
My Social Security payroll contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social
Such a
Security
nasty
Trust Fund.
And former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and Senior Advisor to Hillary Clinton,
they all do,
Philippe
dude.
Reines joins me now.
They all want to just
Philippe,
keep everything the
welcome.
same.
So you said that the key to beating President Trump in a debate is to, quote, get out of his way. What did you mean by that?
First, I want to thank you for that just lovely walk down memory lane.
How'd you feel about that, Philippe?
Parts of it I want to laugh, parts of it I want to cry. I'll probably do it after we hang up.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, look, there is one Donald Trump. People argue which Donald
I mean,
Trump
I don't think that there's anything that out of these debates that's going to change significantly the election results. So why not just let them at each other?
There's no other guy. So that guy is not doing well. That guy, he's got his 40%, but the rest of America is not so keen on the bluster, on the bombast, on the line. Now, it makes good TV, and if Donald Trump's strategy is to really take advantage of the biggest audience he's going to have this campaign, then yeah, he can enjoy himself, and maybe even some people will say he won the debate. But he's losing the race, and if his goal were to come into this debate and try to do some good for himself, he would take a different approach. But as a human being, he's not capable of doing it.
Pretty lame if he didn't agree to a debate. I mean,
going to react? What is Joe Biden going to say?
What's the harm in debating?
It's cool. It's going to lose his cool. The truth of the matter is, if I were Joe Biden, and
I guess if you're Biden, yeah, you might have something to worry about, but not really. I mean, the only thing the Republicans really have on Biden is the Hunter Biden shit.
And with that, I yield my 45 minutes to
Donald Trump. They're not really going to go after his record. I mean, unless they're talking to like black voters, then they'll point out, certain things about Biden's record.
Was that you do see how within the interrupting and the histrionics, he's delivering a message, whether it was job creation or trade, and he was getting in his knocks on her. Now he doesn't do that.
I'm sure Trump will attack him for just losing, for being a loser.
How slippery ramps are, and about
for almost having Bernie beat him.
And angry Democrats. And it's one thing if he stands in the Rose Garden and he has all the time in the world to go off for 50 minutes and throw in some stuff about Joe Biden. He's got 2 or 3 minutes at a shot tonight. If he wants to send, each of those men have to decide, do I want to spend 90 minutes quarreling with the other guy, or do I want to spend 90 minutes talking to the audience? It's clear what choice Trump is going to make. It's clear that Joe Biden knows the more he talks to the audience, the better he is. That doesn't mean he's going to stand there and take whatever comes at him. And by the way,
ultimately we all lose,
and took it. A lot of people would say, including me, I don't want to see someone who can't defend themselves.
Especially if, like,
strong in the face of
I don't think that the Dems are. So, if Trump gets his Supreme Court nominee, I don't think the Dems have it in them to fucking fight the fight that it takes to reduce the Supreme Court term limits.
He's going to blow it. And even the last thing
so
I'll say
I think we will really be fucked.
That he took this
really be fucked.
Debate drug himself, and he were to give a good performance and say, everyone should wear masks and we're going to test more. It'll stop tomorrow. He'll undo anything he does. So that guy's going to show up and that guy's losing. And that guy is counting on Joe Biden to, I don't know, have some kind of health event that disqualifies himself. I mean, that's a pretty passive plan.
Philippe, I want to ask you a question having to do with gender, because you raised this notion of Donald Trump interrupting Secretary Clinton during the debate. Let's go ahead and, at the risk of alienating you, Philippe, we're going to play for some of our viewers here who may have missed our montage off the top, just a little bit of what we saw in 2016. Let's listen.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Philippe, I'm not even sure what the question is. I think I start.
Dude, I get so confused about what the whole fucking
do you think there is
Hillary Clinton thing was, anyways, with the emails? Was it Benghazi? Was that just it? Yeah, montage. Amazing montage.
In these kinds of verbal confrontations.
What was it with the Benghazi thing? Just that she made the wrong call? Like, what the fuck? What the fuck is the big fucking deal about the emails? I just have never understood.
To look at Joe Biden and say, oh, he interrupted Donald Trump. How testy of him, or how touchy of him.
Yeah, he's pretty good with those, and his fucking base loves that
without
shit.
Going down this path too much, we look at these debates and we look at moments.
They
like
love
these
arresting their political opponents.
We only had 44 men who have been president, so it's hard, it's impossible to imagine a woman. Now, Hillary herself has written in her book, in that moment later on where he's stalking her, that I wanted to turn around and say, back off, breathe. You know what? The idea that everyone would applaud and think that's so great, it would have been good TV. And in hindsight, I wish she had done it. But we'd also be talking about, does she have the temperament? Did she lose her cool? Did she, is she too words that I won't say on, family-friendly mediums? And Joe Biden doesn't have to
Joe
worry
Biden
about
an
that.
advantage?
I was lost,
Sorry,
dude.
Philippe, I don't mean to interrupt, but does that mean Joe Biden has
You have to.
an advantage?
You mean like in terms of like she was using the server of the White House or whatever for personal reasons? Is that what you're saying? Like that's what they're so pissed off about? Is that she sent personal
We're all
emails
sitting here like, oh yeah, I remember that
on
moment.
the
That's just another day
server
in
of
our
like
life.
the administration?
You wouldn't have said that. He's not going to say. He might say to Chris Wallace, "That's such
Or
a
like
nasty
she used her work email for
Lord,
personal
that is such
email?
a nasty person." And maybe he says to Joe Biden, "You're so nasty," but it's different. When he said, you know what he won't say, which he said to Hillary.
That's ridiculous.
She doesn't have that
So
presidential
petty.
look. And I don't think he was talking about her tie or lack of. He was saying she's a woman, that she's shorter, she can't bench press as much. I mean, I don't even know what he's saying, but you know it when you hear it.
Oh.
And no, it's not something that Joe Biden has to deal with.
So what? Anybody can get access to their own server. That doesn't fucking mean
Down
anything.
to his benefit. I mean, Hillary has.
I have my
known her
own
down,
server.
and I've worked for her and known her since 2002, but she has an incredibly annoying habit of being right about 4 or 5 years too early.
Exactly, they all do it now. Yeah, of course. Like, oh shit, I can get my own server and then no one can see the emails I send?
As an
Like,
opportunity
yeah.
or a potential liability, given what we've seen so far.
I was just
with
surprised it
respect
took
to
them
the
that long to fucking
trajectory
figure
of
it
this
out.
contest.
No, I would be excited if, first of all, as a human, these people get nervous too. And, he spends some time figuring out what kind of tie he should wear. But if I were Joe Biden, he knows he's ready.
But is it some bigger part of the conspiracy?
He'll have good moments, he'll have
The
bad
fucking
moments, but he knows that this
whatever
is the best
conspiracy
opportunity
that's all
to
wrapped up
talk
in the
to audiences that
QAnon
might not
shit.
ever see. I mean, this is just a lot of people. You're going to have people tonight that are tuning in to Fox to watch Tucker, who are going to say, oh, I'm bumping into a debate. They're going to see them for 90 minutes, and they're going to see them without a filter. Now, they might be yelling and talking over each other, but it's not until later at night that the likes of Sean Hannity gets their hands on these clips and starts to say other things. And that does not benefit Donald Trump. Donald Trump needs that filter.
Is this
He needs
so?
the
Okay,
artificial
hold on. I'm not
guy,
missing the
you know,
debate,
where
right?
you
Like,
on Fox a little while ago said that he's
like
convinced
this is just
Joe
the
Biden's
pre-thing
senile.
before
what
the
problem
debate.
is?
Yeah.
Joe Biden's not senile, and we're all about to see that he's not senile. And yes, these are opportunities, and it's in very simple terms. The debate is a huge moment, but it's just another moment. His convention speech was a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you gotta find out
at a
because these
rally is a
motherfuckers
moment.
are like
His giving a
convoluting
speech
everything
next
all
week is a
together, and I
moment. His
can't
campaign
even
is a
remember,
finale of
dude.
moments.
I
And
can
Joe Biden
barely
has been
remember the
consistent.
Benghazi
Joe
shit.
Biden
I
says tonight
barely remember the
is what
emails
he's gonna say
thing.
tomorrow is what he said last month. Donald, and that's,
Okay, it
that
starts
seems to be
annoying me, that's
working
weird.
with enough people.
Alright, I just want to make sure.
Put him in office.
But it's just so weird how much shit keeps just on
Some of it
happening.
will be the same, but
And
he's so
I
proud
just-
of the fact that he's got new
I can barely
lines of
remember
attack on Joe Biden. I'm
like
sorry, for
some of the most
35 days
horrific
left,
things that have
and you're
happened
still
in the
trying to
past
figure out what to
8
say,
years, 10 years.
then you aren't just blowing a big
I won't
you've been
remember until it's
blowing
like right there in
every
front of my
moment
face
until
again, and that's kind of scary, man. Like some of the massive
All right,
school
well, we are
shootings
just
and
minutes
shit,
away
like the
from
mass
Good Friday's
shootings.
Philippe. Thank you very much.
I barely remember that stuff.
No, thank you for having
It's
me.
like it's not that I blocked it out of my brain on purpose, but there was just so much shit stacked that like I had to like dump some of it just to make room for new shit. It's crazy.
Or maybe he doesn't want the American people,
Yeah,
all of you
I
watching
guess so,
tonight,
man.
to know that he's paid nothing
guess, but
in
I don't
federal
know
taxes, because
if
the
it's on
only
purpose
years
or if
that anybody's ever seen
things are just that
were a couple
bad.
of years when he had to turn them over to
This
state
makes it seem
authorities
like
when he was
things are
trying to
really
get a
bad, but
casino
maybe things
license,
aren't that
and they
bad.
showed
It's just
he
the
didn't
only
pay
thing
any
that they ever
federal
show in the
income
news.
tax.
So
So
That makes
If
me
he's
smart.
paid zero,
I don't
that
know.
means zero
That's why I got off
for
Facebook,
troops,
dude.
zero for vets, zero for schools or health. And
I got off
think
Facebook
probably
because
he's
of
not all that
the
enthusiastic
social
about having the rest
dilemma,
of
or
our
whatever the fuck
country
that
see
documentary on
what the
Netflix
real
is called.
reasons are.
I felt like Facebook was like feeding me certain bits of information, like trying to like read my facial expressions and shit, dude.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is
Oh, you
pretty
said you're
fun.
done when you were
There's more. Experience thought-provoking,
The idea
Here on our way.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on
What happens when you work from
CBS
home?
Sunday morning.
COVID has taken the lives of tens of thousands of Americans. Rural areas like this here in Navajo Nation are especially hit hard.
15 to 30% of our Navajo citizens don't have running water.
Mm-hmm.
Any indigenous
Yeah.
reservation.
Nora says hi, Sty School.
Native Americans are amongst the most vulnerable and hardest hit by COVID.
Yeah, the more we lose our elders to COVID-19, the more
Yeah.
we lose our language and our way of life.
That'd be cool. If we could see them too. Yeah.
Awareness to the attention of Washington, D.C. and
Yeah.
the United States citizens that there is a need to focus on
That would
the
be
first
cool.
citizens of this country.
Because of trolls, idiots, and focused ads. Yep. The ads, not so much, but definitely the trolls and the idiots for sure.
In 60 years, we went from about 100,000 factory workers.
Like the ads don't bother me because I can just like not buy, but like the filtering of the information, just like I don't know. It was just starting to be really weird. I felt like I was like in the Matrix or some shit. And
largest and fastest growing industries in America.
I just had to make a clean break. I have been thinking about getting rid of Facebook for a long time. I just don't know why I just. I just didn't. Sty School Society.
You're donating plasma to get by.
It's literally a slave wage. I don't remember growing up like this. My mom didn't have to go to food banks. It's pretty sad.
Even really young kids are feeling what's going on right now. How should parents be talking to them about this whole question of racial justice?
How do we embrace this moment and turn it into real change?
What we really must focus on is moving
One
from
beer.
protesting to policy.
Join Gail, Anthony, and Tony on CBS This Morning.
CBSN Los Angeles. Get local news, breaking news, anytime, anywhere.
It's easy to find us, and it's free.
Download the CBS News app on your favorite devices. CBSN Los Angeles, streaming 24/7.
You can watch CBSN 24/7.
I've got an amazing story to share with you.
I understand you have some breaking news.
How does it all play?
Come on with the debate, baby.
Quite an adventure here at CBSN.
It's been a day.
We're just minutes away from the start of the first debate between President Trump and Joe Biden. Mr. Trump
It's so funny that our first
28 years
like
to enter
debate in the
first
most
debate
important
trailing in
presidential
national
election of our lives is like
Katie
literally a fucking
joins me
joke.
now. She is a senior U.S. data at the Republican National Committee and former
Yeah.
chief of staff at
It's
the
like such a
RNC.
conflicting
Welcome
feeling,
to you,
like-
Katie. Thanks for joining us. So both President Trump and Joe Biden are trying to win over this small sliver of undecided voters. What role does a debate play in attracting
Who could
those
be
voters?
undecided still at this moment? Like you have to be a fucking idiot if you're still undecided. I'm sorry.
And that it'll be the first time that voters will see the president and former Vice President Biden on the same stage as a contrast. And I think that's a big deal. We really haven't seen former Vice President Biden campaign very much. We haven't seen him on the trail. When we have, he's had a certain level of gaffes. And so I think this will be the first time that the voters can see them side by side. I think that that'll be a big opportunity for, as you mentioned, a small sliver of voters, but still I think it'll make a difference.
All right, I'm going to let our audience know on the left of our screen there, we are looking at live pictures, or we were, of Case Western Reserve University, of course, where that debate is set to get underway minutes from now. So we know the basic topics for tonight. Katie, which ones do you think the president could use to his advantage the most out of the list?
Well, I think the
none of the
economy is really
above.
the president's strong suit. I think he'll talk a lot about the 10.6 million new jobs he's created in the last 4 months since we've kind of reopened post-shutdown with coronavirus, and I think that'll be something he'll come back to over and over again. There are just so many things that are tied to getting people back to work, including opening schools, getting kids back in school. A lot of people get their health care from their work, from their jobs, and so you'll see the president come back over and over, and I believe, to how important it is to keep the economy open, how vital it is to make sure that we're getting people back to work.
6% is a high number of undecided. Yeah, I agree. That's a huge number, dude. Like, I think it's mostly because, like, Biden just doesn't have, like, that populist politician kind of, like, get out the vote excitement, you know?
The president insists that one will be ready within weeks. Medical experts, though, who work for him say that's not true.
Oh, shit. I didn't even debate in high school. I should have, though.
The president's approach should be
I just didn't like Mrs. Wiseman or
Winehouse
or whatever the fuck her name was.
There are Americans who look at this notion of when a vaccine comes
yeah,
out,
I can't
they know,
imagine why people would be so undecided.
In line first to get it,
but 6%, I mean, if those 6 people, like I said before, these debates aren't gonna probably sway all 6%. Like maybe 2%, right? So then you got 4% of people still undecided day of election. What do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to stay home? Do you think they're going to go in and vote? And then that 4% is going to be split 2% towards Trump, 2% towards Biden? Or do you think that they're going to go vote and then just like write in a third-party candidate or vote for a third party?
Of the drug approval process to try and get a drug to market faster. I think once we have a vaccine, it'll come in record time, and I think you will see the Democrats, Vice President Biden and Senator Harris, constantly skeptical of it, and I think the American public will see through that, because the American public says, look, a vaccine should not be
It probably is.
We need to protect our seniors. We need to get people back to work. We need to protect our vulnerable
I mean, it's probably like people that voted for Trump last time that are just like, I really don't want to vote for the guy this time, but like honestly, Biden hasn't done much to convince, you know, people of voting for him. So they're probably like, I don't know much about Biden, like, and it could be like the media campaign against him being too liberal might be working for them, you know, in terms of propaganda.
Were all wearing masks and their chairs appeared to be socially distant. I do also
yeah,
want to
that's
ask
true.
you,
Yeah,
about health
they probably don't know a third party to write in. Yeah, if you're still undecided, fucking idiot.
And
what is wrong with
about
you?
It getting past a democratic controlled Congress?
How stupid do you have to fucking be to be undecided at this point? Sorry if anybody's watching, which probably not, is undecided, but like.
So I'm not terribly optimistic that anything would get passed. With the Democrat
I think people also put undecided when they like know they're not going to vote or whatever. Like, I don't know who I would vote for. I'm just not going to vote. Like, I just don't know shit about politics, and I never will. You know.
And so I think it is really something that he will continue to talk to seniors about. It's a main issue.
Okay, 1 minute.
Over and over again.
1 minute.
Prescription drug prices, and so I think you'll see the president continue to talk about the elements of a healthcare plan that he thinks are important, but I don't think there's much chance that anything gets through the Democrat-controlled House.
What is that noise?
So we shouldn't expect a sort of comprehensive plan, more piecemeal kind of elements, as you say, of what he would like to see in healthcare.
Well, I'm sure the White House may put out a policy paper that kind of outlines what he would like to see in a bill.
How does he not have his healthcare plan sorted out after all this fucking time, bro? It's been years.
And so he'll continue to put his benchmarks out and say, these are the things that I would want in a healthcare bill. If we're going to talk about what is important with healthcare as the American public, this is what I want to see.
Yeah,
I think he'll maybe put out vision papers. I think you'll see the president communicate that directly, as he often does with American people, but I don't think you'll see any.
I really don't know, man.
I think you'll continue to see Democrats, Republicans.
6% is a lot, though, of undecided. I don't know what it's been in the past, but that seems like a lot for this election. Specifically this election. I could have understood maybe last election.
Thanks for having me.
The fuck? But this election?
And the first debate between
you can't be undecided.
Trump and Joe Biden is about to get started. let's go to our CBS News Primetime Special.
I don't know if this is going to get flagged because it's CBS or something. It probably will get taken down, but who cares? Because I don't make money off these videos anyways. I just can't have like show anything like violent. Otherwise, they'll like suspend my account for like a week. So that doesn't really matter either, but.
Good evening. I'm Nora O'Donnell with Gail King and John Dickerson in the nation's capital, and we are just moments away from the first presidential debate between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. After months of long-distance attacks, aides for both candidates say tonight the gloves and the masks will come off. The two men arrived at the debate hall at Case Western Reserve University a short time ago. They are not expected to shake hands because of the coronavirus pandemic.
And let's not forget, as we come on the air tonight, this virus has killed more than 205,000 Americans. This pandemic has led the U.S. into its worst economic contraction since the Great Depression. More than 26 million Americans are claiming unemployment benefits, and two late developments have thrown a match into an already volatile race. The Republicans' effort to quickly replace the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Coney Barrett, and the latest revelations about President Trump's taxes.
The stage is set for this first showdown. There will be no opening statements. Chris Wallace of Fox News asking the questions. He was chosen by the Presidential Debate Commission, and he's identified 6 main topics: the Trump and Biden records, the Supreme Court, COVID-19, the economy, race and violence in cities, and the integrity of the election.
It is going to be quite the night ahead. Let's bring in CBS's Ben Tracy at the White House. And Ben, what are you hearing from the Trump campaign?
Well, Nora, we're hearing that President Trump is ready to joust and that he feels that Joe Biden's family and his cognitive abilities are fair game in this debate. Now, the president is expecting the first question out of the gate will be about his taxes, these revelations that he basically did
his plan is to push healthcare for
We're also told by the campaign as they're trying to play down
another 4 years.
for this debate that he actually has been practicing, and they say he's ready for any question that may come his way.
Yeah, he's gonna try to put something out there,
Ed O'Keefe. He is in the debate hall where the anticipation
just so he can get reelected. But that's the thing though, if he does run to the left of Biden on healthcare, he could win the election fair and square, including the popular vote. But I don't know. I don't think he has the balls to do that.
Maintain his lead in battleground states. One thing we shouldn't expect Biden to do tonight is serve as a real-time fact checker. He'd suggested earlier this month that's what he wanted to do. His aides now say he'll instead try speaking directly to the American people. Here in the room tonight, we count about 107 invited guests. That's down from the usual 900 who observed
That should make it interesting.
Nora?
Ed O'Keefe, thank you. And John, does Trump know that he has to change the trajectory of this race as it stands now?
Absolutely. You can hear Ben Tracy say it, which is he's going to be going at all over the place because he wants to shake things up. That's always been his way.
The debate is about to begin. Here now, the moderator, Chris Wallace.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just let me know when. I just sort of got like, I've got a lot of work that I'm doing, but it's all stuff I can move around. So you just let me know when it's going to be. Okay.
Is this it? Is this the beginning? What are they doing?
Good evening from the Health Education campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments, with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest.
I still feel like that's enough time.
Both campaigns have agreed.
For as long as these debates are, I still don't feel like I don't feel like they cover anything.
And the questions in each topic,
what?
I can assure you, none of the
They get 15, like broken up into 15-minute segments. Each topic, I think.
This debate is being conducted under health and safety
like 3 hours.
Designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed the candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
Oh, wow. How you doing, man? That's what Joe Biden said. How you doing, man? How professional. Well, sir.
This night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the President and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all.
Who, Chris Wallace?
Academic.
Yeah, dude. He's been working there for a minute, I think.
In every way. In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time, even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school, and we just won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her, and very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is to try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. Looking forward to this, Mr. President.
The lame ducks should kill the Democrats.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court
Yeah,
nominee
it's fucking
is.
weird.
And that say occurs when they vote for United States senators
think
and when
there's
they
a way I can
vote
get rid of
for
that.
the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court, and the justice, and I have nothing. I'm not opposed to the justice. She seems like a very fine person, but she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be held pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They're able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people with
Oh my
pre-existing
God, his
conditions.
tie.
And they'll be taken away as well.
What is that, a single
Those
Windsor?
pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February. All right.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
It's elected to the next.
During that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And
Oh my God. Do you think he just tied it like he was trying to tie his shoe or something? Because that's probably the only thing he knows how to tie.
You're going to extinguish 100.
Yeah, there's like no knot there. Yeah.
like somebody probably tried to
Yeah. There's no way somebody did that for him because they would have known how to do it right.
Go ahead, Vice President. Number one, he knows that.
It's probably a clip-on.
What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said, and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply.
Your party doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist medicine.
Party is
and
me.
socialist
right
healthcare.
now. I am.
And they're going to dominate you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the Democratic Party is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act?
Joe, you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me about this.
I'm happy to talk about
And if you were here, it wouldn't be 200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You didn't want me to ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban...
All right, gentlemen,
which was heavily infected. You would have been much later, Joe.
Mr. President,
Mr. President. You're talking about 2 million people.
President, as the moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is all
You don't know it's on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it on the ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the court.
I don't think so.
In the court. Well,
there's nothing happening there.
Donald,
Wait, I missed it. I wasn't paying attention. What are they talking about?
I don't know.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time.
He's so old.
On health care, and
They're
then we'll
both
come back
so
to Roe v. Wade. All right, Mr. President.
God, I mean, I know we're getting up there too, dude, but like,
a week after
can
the
you
election,
imagine?
in which the Trump administration, along with 18
Dude, I'm
state
70 something.
attorneys
The last thing I want to do is run for president. Sorry,
Obamacare,
my dog's
to
being
end
loud.
Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well, I'll give you an
I'm going
to give you an opportunity.
I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a big
not
chunk
a
of
comprehensive plan.
That is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst part of Obamacare. Chris, that was the worst part of Obamacare.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it. And we will protect people.
I'm the moderator of this debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer.
Go ahead.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace
Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something.
Ouch.
There's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting
Trump's
drug
just an
prices.
asshole.
I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against Big Pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care. All of the things that we've done, insulin, I give you an example, insulin, it was destroying families, destroying people. The cost, I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water, you want to know the truth. So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drugs.
So cheap, it's like water.
Governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because they pay just a tiny
Yeah, Zinger one.
This is open discussion. Let me ask you,
Zinger 2, yeah.
sir, you'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance. It is and will. I ask you the question. It will end. What your
party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid.
Do these people not understand what the fuck?
Free in most states, except
Hustling
governors
is
who
the
want to
new crack, I
deny
know.
poor Medicaid.
God, because the fucking boomers, dude.
Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority
People don't understand what option
still
means.
not be in that option. Number one.
Joe, you agreed with Bernie Sanders, who's far left, on the manifesto we call it. That gives you socialized medicine. Are you saying you didn't agree?
The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders. Not by much.
Yeah.
Like I know he knows it. I'm here standing facing you.
Pocahontas would have left 2 days early. You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to do is hurt.
Tuesday. You got very lucky.
Here's the deal. I
told you he's gonna bring up his barely getting beat, like barely beating Bernie shit. That's all he's got.
Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the
I want to make sure.
You did last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make sure.
Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has.
You'd be surprised. You pick up, be surprised. Go
The
ahead.
wrong guy, the wrong night at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with Bernie.
Here we go, they're funny! Here it goes!
There is no manifesto.
Please let him speak, Mr.
Number two.
You just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan.
Folks,
absolutely
folks, do you have any idea what this plan's
socialized? They
doing?
call it
Mr. President.
socialized medicine.
Mr.
I'll
President.
tell you what. He is not.
This is getting
for
fun. This is getting
any
great.
Help for people
It's lit.
needing health care because he in fact
Bernie?
already
Bernie?
has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from
Bernie?
employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two, there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now.
See what?
Wants to take it away. He wants to look in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
I want to give
Number
better
three.
health care at a much lower price. Because
By the way, he doesn't know how to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never
Already
offered a
fixed it
plan.
to an
Why is
extent.
he not coming over?
You might know, but probably not.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking at the same time, let the president speak. Go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guarantee pre-existing
You
conditions.
just
but
lost
took away
the left.
individual
No, you
mandate.
didn't.
Listen, this is the way
He's so funny, dude.
And that destroyed. They shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well. And I just had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive, premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it. Chris, we want to get rid of it.
I understand it, sir, but I have to give you roughly equal time. Please let the vice president talk.
He has no plan for health care.
Of course we do.
Sends,
Please.
he sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
I have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now. Make sure you, in fact, let people know your senators. I'm not going to answer the question because the question is,
Justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This is so,
gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19,
Wow.
which is an awfully serious
Here we
subject. So let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases.
Dude, just what the fuck? Like, he didn't even have to dodge that question. That was so easy for Trump to just come in and say that. Like, he didn't even have to dodge it.
Experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far, and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck.
Good luck. He said good luck to himself.
As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying.
I love Trump's
When he was
face.
presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is.
Damn.
The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic.
Oh my god, yeah. I don't know what it's like having kids, but I can imagine this is like when your kids first get home from fucking school and they're just so stoked to tell you everything about that happened that day, and you're just like, slow down, slow down.
He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us
And first of all, whatever you're saying, it doesn't even make sense logically.
Gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective
the camera?
We should be providing the
Probably.
money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open. Open schools that cost a lot of money.
You're just like,
You should get out
whoa,
of your
calm
bunker and
down.
get out
You're
of
like,
the
holy
sand trap
shit.
and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you,
Yeah, send out another stimulus check or
if we would have
two.
listened to you, the country would have been
More
left
stimulus
wide
checks.
open. Millions millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country.
Cash that shit.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said,
I haven't even spent the
Trump
first
saved thousands of lives. Many of you Democrat governors said,
aren't we going to have to pay it
Trump
back
did
in
a
our taxes?
phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing
we don't have to pay it back?
Job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give
matter.
me bad press.
I already owe the
because
IRS
that's the way
money.
it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job.
Well, you didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There was no recession.
You made a point. Let him answer.
And there was no one. We didn't shut down the economy. This is his
I have
economy.
to probably say that Trump does probably have the upper hand over Biden in this specific argument. Even though he had the shittiest response to fucking COVID ever. I think these talking points are good for his base.
You couldn't even speak to them. You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far more people. Far more people. And you would have been.
And by the way, his own CDC director says
What?
we could lose as many as another 200,000.
So is that just for federal employees? Because he didn't, like, my federal taxes are still getting taken out. I know it was based off each employer, but did all the federal government just follow Trump's order then?
For a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
Johnson, Pfizer.
Okay, by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words. But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because
I would
people
just
like
take
this would
those
rather make it
extra
political than save lives.
taxes and put that money into the stock market, so at least you get some kind of interest off of it, so that way when you do have it back, at least you have to pay it back, at least you have something to show for
They
it.
can go faster than that by a lot.
But what can you do, you know?
Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call them left, I don't know what I call
the head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slaoui?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
he said it's a possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be after
when it's
that.
generally available.
Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up. Logistically, they're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This is the same man.
It's all set up.
By Easter, this would be gone away. by the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the same man.
That was said sarcastically, you know that. That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine.
That really sucks.
By the end
Social
of the
Security
year.
tax is like the highest tax.
Will not occur until sometime beginning of the middle of
So
next year
I know
to get
personally
it out
for me,
if
like
we get the vaccine.
I get a few $100
we will.
to take it out. Social
Mr. Vice
Security
President, I
every
want to
month,
pick up
every paycheck.
I want to pick up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists.
Yeah, I'm not lining
but
up
they
for
can't trust
fucking
President
shots from the
Trump. In
military,
fact, you said
especially in the
that again
military. Are you
tonight.
kidding me? They're
Your
gonna
running
fuck that
mate,
up.
Senator Harris goes further, saying the public health experts, quote,
Oh no,
will be
no.
muzzled, will be suppressed, given the fact that polls already show.
Even though it depends on how much they would pay me, but I am willing to do the get COVID to test the vaccine. I am willing
And
to.
your running mate, Senator Harris,
Depending on what the price tag
No
is.
more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you can't.
If we're talking about a quick 10K, just to get COVID, test out the vaccine, then whatever, I can move on with my life. I could use 10K right now, dude. Anything less than that, I
Try to
don't
do,
think I
but
can
there's
do it.
millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by the way,
To the scientists that are in charge, they will have the vaccine very soon.
you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies
Yeah,
he's told
cash.
you about the whole issue relating to COVID. He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't.
You do it
even
too?
tell
Yeah.
you. He's on
Fuck
record
yeah, dude. Let's
saying
get COVID together,
he
dude.
panicked, or he just looked at the stock market. One of the two. Because guess what? A lot of
We'll be
people
alright.
died.
We won't die,
More gonna
probably.
die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President.
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
See,
and it's
We're going
going
to get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast.
Okay.
Look forward to talking.
When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those.
He said, Joe, you were last in your
Vice
class.
President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide them
Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Will he just shush for a minute? And
Schumer.
by the way, Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with him in the Senate. And he sits in his golf course. And I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact
Well, he wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd. Because it's a political.
Yeah, exactly. He's getting degrees from us. You know.
Those states are not doing well that are shut down.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
No, I think
the
masks
efficacy
are okay.
of
You have
masks?
to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on it, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks and social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
Well, look
serious.
at Dr. Fauci
Seriously. I'm just surprised he hasn't gotten COVID yet. I want him to get COVID so bad. That would just, like, something good. Like, let something good happen when Trump get COVID or.
Your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
nobody will show up.
People with
What's true? Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
but are you not
done a
worried
great
about
job as a president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you not worried about
we
the
have
disease
a lot of
issue,
people.
sir?
Well, so far, we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had?
Why you not? Why you not?
To ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. All right, put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35, 40,000 people at these rallies.
Just quickly finish
I thought it was
up,
25,000 a minute ago. No, it's 35, 40,000.
He has handled the
He's fucking
social
hilarious. He's
distancing and people
delusional.
wearing masks, basically encourage them not to.
All right.
Ben, he's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape.
Right.
What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of
I
the
mean,
China
literally,
plague.
if you think about it, if he is only pulling crowds of 30 to 45,000 people or whatever, in these major cities of millions of people,
and again,
that's not that many.
People would be dead now. Instead of
Definitely not enough to win the popular vote, especially if in the states with smaller cities. You're talking about like 20% of the state. That's, that's not good.
10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. when you look at North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others. You got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing.
Of a town,
and he'll
and
close
he's
down the whole country.
said
This
it was
guy
the
will
biggest
close down the whole
fire.
country
Yeah,
and destroy
exactly.
our country. Our country is coming back incredibly
He's talking
well,
about maybe
setting
he probably
records as
pulls
it does
in,
it. We don't
from
need
what I've
somebody to
seen
come in and say, let's
of
shut it
his
down.
rallies.
All right. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to
The
you.
most I've ever seen is a couple thousand people.
As I said, posing the question, the president
But
says
even
it's a
if, let's say, he went to
V-shaped recovery, you say it's a
Oklahoma,
K-shaped
what's the fucking
recovery.
population
What's
of
the difference?
Oklahoma
The difference
State?
is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well.
No, he's Oklahoma.
Billionaires have raised
649,000.
billion dollars.
So 650,000 people in Oklahoma. Let's say he pulled 20,000 in Oklahoma. I mean, that's only just a fraction.
You
Like,
folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's his two. Yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines. Those people who have been saving our lives.
you have the same
Those people
daily
who went out
numbers?
there
What's that mean?
dying. People who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open?
How many people are in
Because
Iowa?
it costs
Over a
them
million,
money
right?
to open
Yeah,
them
of
safely.
course.
You know, they were
So what are
going
you
to give,
saying?
his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they
Over
decided,
3
no,
million.
couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency.
Oh,
Not a
yeah,
national
yeah,
emergency.
gotcha.
They've done nothing to help small businesses.
Yeah,
Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of
I
the
don't know
needs of
what.
the American people.
What did you guys
so
do
we
for
can open safely.
shutdowns?
Time
Did
is
you?
up, sir.
I'm sure the rural counties they just ignored it. That's the same thing out here in Oregon. The rural counties were like, yeah, we're not going to shut down. They open up as soon as they possibly
Shut
can.
down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and
they hated
I'm
football.
very happy to do it. And the people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out?
The people of Ohio are very
economic
proud of you.
plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in
Do you have a Democratic
2016, the year you were
governor in
elected
Iowa?
president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid
You guys didn't do shit, right?
$750 a year in federal income tax
Shut down?
each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question.
Taxes,
Is
nice.
it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I
told you, I knew he was going to say that.
I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to do, go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and we have a very, I built a great
I'm asking you a specific question, which is...
let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President, I'm asking you a question. will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So not 750.
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just say something.
Yeah, I knew he was just gonna fucking lie and just say he paid millions of dollars in taxes. Yeah.
I was a private developer.
Just fucking lies.
Business people. Like every
Players.
other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We built a building and we get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? It would not take 8 years for the IRS to audit me. Period. It would take them 2 seconds. The only difference is that Trump has fucking lawyers that he pays to actually fucking fight the IRS. Like,
school teacher makes.
he actually has lawyers. Like,
He says he's smart because he can take advantage of the
yeah,
tax
we would be in jail or either we'd have to fucking pay it. Period.
That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts, and I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help.
Basically, all you have to do is just waste their time. Eventually, he's gonna have to pay that money.
Why did you do it? Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator, and
You're the worst president America's ever had. Come on.
Damn.
in 47 months, I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe.
He said, "You're the worst president America's ever had."
Fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
He brought that out this early.
I'd like to ask you about your plans.
45 minutes in, he brought out. He hit him with the worst president America's ever seen.
If you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year.
Most of us use fucking TurboTax, you rich
President
asshole.
Trump says that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the
I
economy
hate
as
him
it's
so
just coming
much.
out of a recession.
Well, just take a
I don't understand how his base loves him so much. They don't even know shit about taxes or anything. They just pay taxes. They probably don't even question it. They probably don't even fucking.
million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two,
They don't know
it would
shit
create
about the
an
tax
additional
shit, though.
$1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company
But
in
respectfully,
America.
sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a
foundation.
significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars. Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done, and you know what happened?
You got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is
Mr. President, Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery since economic recovery since 1929.
Yeah, the shitty thing is for people who make slightly over 100K, in between that 100K and 400K mark, you're paying so much of your income in taxes. Like,
1929. Let me tell you about the stock market.
it's not really the same, have the same effect on the economy, because if you're making that much money, 100,000 or in between 100 and 400, then you could save that money that you would usually be spending on your taxes, but you could spend it on other things that would help boost the economy more.
They will leave, and you will have a depression the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back.
Yeah, I don't know who in the government makes 400K or more besides.
We handed
Isn't
him a
the
booming economy. economy.
President's salary only $3 something.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since
I could see some like military officers making that much money though.
In fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID.
Yeah, but because
especially with their dependents benefits and shit.
Manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing.
You should just go back in the military, dude.
Number two. Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing.
Yeah.
I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. My standard fare.
I'm the guy
He
that brought
totally
back
gave
the
up on
automobile
manufacturing.
All right, let him.
We brought back. I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. I brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio. And they didn't come in.
Mr. Vice President, cut it.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done.
Jack.
He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit with Mexico.
Lunch,
All
down
right,
18%.
gentlemen.
In China, ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out
here comes the
billions
sun
of dollars to
shit.
manage. He makes millions of dollars.
Here comes the
And
sun
also,
shit.
While we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million? What did he do to
I
deserve it?
bet, dude. Ohio is one of the fucking worst states I've ever been to in my life. It's that place is a fucking hellhole.
None of that is true.
Really? He didn't get
Mr. President, please.
Totally discredited.
And by the way, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice
He got $3.5 million.
That is not true.
Really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burroughs pay him $183,000 a month?
Uh-oh.
With no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
My son did nothing wrong at
Mr. President,
I forgot about that, dude.
Let me answer because he
I
knows
totally
have the
forgot he
truth.
got peed on.
His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited, and you can by everybody. Well, by the media,
Fries,
by
dude.
allies,
Yeah.
by everyone.
Really, is that pee?
Matter of fact,
Mr. President,
Okay, well, he peed on me, well.
So let me ask you this.
go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
He got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well. I did it
I'd like to know
honorably.
who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't.
Well, here's the,
With you,
Go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Hey, let me just say, dude.
No. I'm Mr. President. I'm
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
That is simply.
Why did he
not true.
deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's already.
My family lost a fortune by coming down and helping us with government.
Coming down and helping us with government. He said my family lost a fortune by coming down and helping out with government. Oh my god, dude. Oh my god, this guy is so trash.
It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
All right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
It didn't take them.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important question.
He
stood up.
No, the answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
That is
You know what?
absolutely not true.
doing it.
You're going to have
True.
Gentlemen, I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to be, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal.
Good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be
This is how, if you've ever been in an argument with somebody else and everybody else in the room is just looking at you two, not saying anything, this is exactly how they feel.
But he does plenty.
This is exactly how people feel when other people are arguing, and they just sound so dumb. Both parties.
President Biden, you say that President Trump's response
Yeah, it's a
to the
preschool class.
violence
It's like
in Charlottesville 3
you
years
in
ago,
that corner, you in that corner.
very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any president, with the possible exception
Dude, this
of
is about
Abraham
to,
Lincoln.
this is
My
about to
question
piss me
for the
off.
two of you
Clearly, this is about to
why
start
should
to piss me
voters
off right
trust
now.
you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we've never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But
Yeah, you guys could all get exploited equally. Hold on, we're working on it. Just give us a couple more years and we'll make sure everyone,
what those people look like coming out of the fields,
white or
carrying
black,
torches, their veins bulging,
exploited.
just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president's ever said anything like that.
It is who's
now second,
sir.
Second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible.
That's true.
And then what happened?
He did do that.
The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's
obviously Joe Biden's way stronger on this issue.
that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at
Even though he's fucking full of shit, but he's
African-American community.
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
Did a crime bill, 1994,
right,
where you call them super predators.
Yeah, it's weird that he held the Bible, considering that he's not even fucking religious, and he held it upside down. I mean, you could say whatever you want to say about what that means.
And I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You called them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States.
But what's that have to do with like black people, though?
I have Ohio. I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement.
Portland's not a county, first of all. It's a fucking city, you dumb fuck. You don't have sheriffs in fucking cities, you dumbass.
And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because, you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out
they all need to retire, right? But I think that fucking, since fucking Trump is bringing up the past, I think Joe Biden needs to bring up Trump's past about the fucking Central Park 5 and how he wanted those fucking kids fucking basically executed when, like, they weren't guilty of doing anything at all. But Trump was the main one that was like, fucking kill him, fucking execute him, death penalty for them all. Those kids, they were kids, they were literally kids, they were like 13 years old.
Anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice in this country.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's going to try to arrest all of his political opponents if he can, for sure.
Which is enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples, and when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it, but we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Yeah. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
what is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of a town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place,
that
you
is
say
not
peaceful protest? No, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else, and he would know.
What is radical
it's totally
about
racist.
Racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a
It just pisses me off watching these two racists
paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars
argue about racism. Like, they're both wrong. Like, they're both. It's all fucked up. Like, but this is the fucking. These are the people that set the narrative on racism in our country. Like,
we have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this than he does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me who grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat
racism. Let's organize the working class.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous
and do a general strike.
There was hatred. You look at Ferguson. You go to many places.
Ferguson's not going to go in for a general
look
strike,
what happened in
dude.
Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now. But the reason is that the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like
not the feds, but for like for the federal government. Nora's asking me at Sty School if he'd be down a general strike with us, and I said no, you wouldn't.
Justice where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is violent crime went down.
I said no, but I said no because he has a kid. She said no because he works for the feds.
Went down much more.
Huh? Because he's a kid.
Mr.
He
President,
has a kid.
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Since we had trouble with Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago,
We should look at where we want to order food.
53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York,
dare talk about Chicago, you punk bitch!
The numbers are going up 100, 150, 200% crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like you've never seen.
Know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not. I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and races don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force,
they're for real arguing about some
quote,
suburb life.
reimagining
No, I'm the real one from the suburbs
First of all, what does
guy.
reimagining policing mean?
Yeah, it's
and
so
do
hard
you
in the burbs.
support?
It means,
let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean? And do you support the Black Lives Matter call for
the Black Lives Matter thing?
control of policing?
Do you support the Black Lives Matter stuff?
having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police.
You think if you strike, you're fired?
For a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance.
Yeah.
They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to.
For anyone who can't strike, we should encourage them to Italian strike.
Community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what he's talking about, defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support. He has no law enforcement
That's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
not. Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
Think
All right.
Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported you.
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another
There you go.
subject,
Yeah, just work really slow.
Protests in many
Don't
cities
like get anything done.
violent in Portland, Oregon,
It's not my
especially.
favorite kind of fucking strike, anyways.
Straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held
I'm constantly
accountable.
striking.
The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted. And anyone who commits it.
But you've never called for the people, the leader. Excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to call it, bring in the National Guard, and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here,
Oh, really?
Here's the thing.
I asked
marshals get the killer of the young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3 days,
President Trump
wouldn't do anything. I had to send in the U.S. Marshals, and they took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help us cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the point. The point is that's what he keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, and every single solitary time.
And to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly criticized...
You have to answer his statement.
You have repeatedly...
Wait,
you've been talking
He made a statement.
I'm asking you...
I would love to end it.
Sir,
I would love to end it.
if you want to switch seats,
we could very quickly.
We could do that, but
the National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other...
He's just pissed because he doesn't have the power to fucking just go in and clamp down on the protesters and just shut them the fuck down,
And to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland. Are you prepared to specifically
do it? I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white
supremacists.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what.
What? Proud Boys stand back and stand by? What?
This is a left wing. This is a left wing.
White supremacists.
What?
Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
He's so fucking stupid.
That's what his tonight.
He's fucking like
director
waging his whole campaign.
We're done, sir. We're moving on to the next one.
That's not an idea.
Yeah, no worries, dude. I'm getting pissed.
Truth is a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous radical.
Gentlemen, we're now moving on to the Trump and Biden records.
They'll overthrow you.
When a president,
yeah, what a fucking piece of shit, dude.
When the president seeks a second term,
hold back and hold by.
On his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, "Don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative."
Shit,
and in this case, sir,
if I was Chris, I would just sit back and let him run around, dude. Who cares?
At both of your records, I'm going to ask.
Sorry, your fault. You tried.
Why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first. 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important.
How do you feel about that, Skyschools of vet? Is the VA better? I haven't been to the VA hospital in a minute, so I wouldn't really know, but if you've been, let me know.
Supreme Court judges, justices. That is a record the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings. You can't be a good president. You can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker,
more
divided.
Yeah, because of filibuster.
When I
Yeah,
was
exactly.
vice president,
Yeah. They fucking shut his ass down during
I was asked to fix it.
the
I
last
did.
one.
We left him a booming economy.
Remember that was rough.
And he caused a recession with regard to being weaker. The fact is that I've gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got
$3 million. And by the way, my son.
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word. Can you add back
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So,
They might. I ain't
thirdly,
fucking break
we're
from this
poor.
shit.
The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of office, there are 15% less violence
Nice
in
one.
America than there is today.
That hurt him.
He's president of the United States.
He said you
It's
earned
on
less.
his
You're worse
watch.
off than you were
And with
before.
regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son,
Talking about
the way
money.
you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes. And I resent you like hell.
Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm
Hunter?
talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking about
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah, you know Bo.
Hunter got thrown out of the military.
Here we go with Hunter again. That's all I've been got.
Dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It wasn't
Cocaine use, and he didn't have a job until you became vice president. Once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made
son,
a fortune.
my son,
and he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home.
Was he dishonorably discharged, or was he?
He's fixed it.
Or did he get a BCD?
And I'm proud of him.
But why was he
Proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All right,
of
but he
dollars?
wasn't given tens of millions of dollars.
He probably got a BCD, didn't he? The big chicken dinner.
We've already been through.
Bad conduct discharge.
We've already been through this.
Yeah, he's Biden's son. He got the BCD. They didn't dishonorable. They didn't even dishonorably discharge me, and I'm fucking. I got NJP twice. I got NJP'd a month before my fucking separation. So.
Is totally discredited. Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money. That report was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres.
Okay, we're not gonna get a break.
Displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You you've got to have forest management.
What do you believe? What do you believe about the science of climate
This
change?
fool has never been to the forest in his life. I guarantee you that.
Everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting.
Do you believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of the planet?
I think a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management,
I got 2 chicken dinners.
You wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point,
doubt it.
You can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of management.
Sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars?
Well, not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply ignored.
No, but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me. Many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong. Number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability of us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion. Say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now.
Automobiles.
The fact is, it's all true. And here's the deal.
Talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building. It's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. You know, that's not true either, right? This is a $100 trillion. That's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we were
not the case.
All right, let me because I actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good-paying jobs.
Let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that. The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives to people for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
That's what he did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up a.
We're going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs.
Job schmobs.
The environment is clean, and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now, on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in
fires.
Look what's happening just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. They didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem.
Say it's not, Donald. Say it's not.
But the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
the Green
you want to rebuild every building.
My plan.
I want to rebuild every. If he made a statement about the military, he said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
What
he did is he said
segment.
He called the military stupid bastards.
I
He said it on tape. He said stupid bastards.
Stop.
I would never say that.
Play it.
Go ahead.
But didn't he say something about fucking how
his
military people were stupid or something?
I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental change will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
Do you support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
You support that?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
that means you just lost the radical left.
I support the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment. Election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election, and what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote, they should go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there was no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that will be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change, or you get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition, because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won, and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense, and President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well, because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months, because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost for that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what
They
do
throw
you
them
do
out
about it?
left
If there
and
are
right.
millions of ballots going out right now?
What you do is you
gonna
go and vote. You do a solicited ballot, and that's okay, or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people.
You go and vote. You go and vote,
but
like
what I'm
they
saying is, what are you
like they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well. This is not going to end well.
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in until the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
No, I want to continue with you on this. Vice President Biden. Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable number, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this, because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, when you have 80 million ballots,
I have a final
sending it, swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already there's been
mail service delivers
gentlemen, the final question is, in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until election day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest, and will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what, from a common sense, I'll tell you what it means. It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
You think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
You had an opportunity to respond. Go ahead.
They have no idea what happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it.
Oh man,
And if
I'm
it's
so
me,
nervous.
In fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome.
No,
And
don't
I'll
say
be
that.
president not just for the Democrats. I'll be president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're
And I
going to
think
leave
he
it
does
there.
too.
To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The 2 vice presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you.
That'll be great.
And good night.
Until then, thank you.
Oh, there it is. Tweedledum and Tweedledummer, debate number 1.
And thus the first presidential debate of 2020 concludes a night of chaos and interruption.
It's pretty wild.
Where the former Vice President of the United States
I can't listen to my thoughts with that lady talking, but basically I hated everything that they said, and I hated everything, especially that they said about race. So that's that, and we're fucked, and